As Samantha Green approached the porch, the air thickened with unspoken words and memories left unshared. The scent of rain mingled with the distant sound of laughter, wrapping around her like a familiar yet painful embrace. Why did stepping inside have to feel like facing a storm? Every creak of the floorboards echoed in the silence, a reminder of the many moments that had led her back to this place. Moments she had longed for, but now feared. What awaited her on the other side of that door? Joy or unresolved tensions? Samantha had imagined this homecoming for over 2 decades, yet she never expected the door to feel like a barrier. The fall air was sharp with the scent of dry leaves and chimney smoke. Yellow and Chloe Turner leaves scattered across the driveway as she stepped out of the cab, her duffel bag over one shoulder and a small box of souvenirs in her hand. A soft ache swelled in her chest. Everything felt smaller now. The house, the yard, even the street where she once rode her bike. The knot in her stomach tightened with each step toward the front door of her childhood home in rural Ohio. As she paused for a moment before knocking, memories flooded back. She saw herself again, a shy girl of 9 or 10, clutching a book in the living room corner while her parents showered praise on Chloe Turner for her science fair trophy. Samantha had placed second. They never noticed. When the door creaked open, Chloe looked surprised. Her mouth moved, forming something like Samantha's name, but the smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "Samantha," she said, blinking as if facing a ghost. "Hey," Samantha replied, forcing a cautious smile. "Didn't think I'd need an invitation." Chloe opened the door wider. "You didn't call." Samantha lifted the box slightly. "Figured I'd bring my own welcome. Thought Mom would like these. Some handmade candles from base, and for Robert Green, a coin from the old unit." Chloe stepped aside. "They're in the kitchen." The house smelled of lemon cleaner and something baking, but the warmth didn't reach Samantha. As she stepped inside, she caught sight of Mom Grace Miller at the kitchen island, chopping apples with her usual routine-driven precision. Robert Green stood at the coffee machine scrolling through his phone. They both looked up simultaneously. The pause that followed felt longer than necessary. "Hi," she said. Their eyes drifted to her uniform. Not the crisp dress blues, but her old fatigues, pressed as best she could. All she had were memories and worn-out boots. "You're her. I wanted it to be a surprise." The moment I stepped through the door, the air was thick with silence, like the calm before a storm. Robert Green set his mug down, his brow furrowed. "Did you just get out?" I nodded, the weight of that question hanging heavy in the air. "Last month." His curt nod hit me like a punch. "You didn't bring much." I glanced around. "Where's the car?" Silence hung, thick and suffocating. Finally he answered. "Sold it last year." My stomach dropped. "You sold my car?" A knot twisted in my gut. "There wasn't room for old junk," he said, his tone flat. "You weren't using it." I fought to keep my voice steady, even as it cracked. "It was in my name." But he shot back. "It was in the garage of our house. We needed the space." I stared, my heart racing. I wanted to ask if they used the money for Chloe Turner's wedding or one of their vacations, but I clamped my mouth shut. Turning to Mom, I said, "You didn't even tell me." She shrugged, tossing another apple slice into the bowl. "We didn't think it mattered. You were gone. Gone like a stranger. Like a package returned to sender." Chloe Turner lingered near the stairs, her eyes downcast. "I didn't know either," she mumbled, her voice barely a whisper. I took in the photos lining the walls, the empty space where my car used to sit, and the kitchen I had pictured so many times from my bunk. I thought there'd be hugs, maybe a banner, or at least a hot cup of coffee. Robert Green crossed his arms, the tension in the room crackling like static. "Samantha, you chose your path. Military life, discipline, independence. We respected that." I straightened my shoulders, trying to stand tall. "I gave 20 years." His gaze hardened. "No one asked you to. You chose that over family. So maybe you should go back to the barracks where you belong." The air thinned, the room blurring around the edges. I hadn't expected a parade, but exile? I opened my mouth, the word "Mom" stuck in my throat like a splinter. Silence fell, heavy and suffocating. Chloe Turner looked at the floor, and Mom returned to her apples, smoothing them as if they were more important than me. Robert Greene picked up his mug again, as though I wasn't even there. Each step toward the door felt like dragging a chain. I stepped down from the porch, clutching the box of souvenirs, and turned to look at the house. It stood there, with its white shutters, cracked steps, and the windows I once peeked through as a girl, now feeling like a ghost of my past. What happened to the warmth? Why was I left with only shadows? It looked the same, but it felt like a stranger's house. I stepped back, staring at the familiar home as if I was seeing it for the first time. I used to be their pride, my photo hanging in living rooms, but now, maybe just a memory, tucked away in a box. The kitchen was eerily silent. Only the soft clink of a spoon against a mug dared to break the stillness. I'd shared meals in war zones that felt warmer than this moment. Chloe Turner, scrolling through her phone, tried to show me a picture of Paris, but the words slid past me like fading echoes. My eyes landed on a dusty photo behind her, a fading snapshot of me in uniform at my first oath ceremony. Standing tall, nerves buzzing like electricity through my veins, that picture used to shine in the living room, its proud frame gleaming, but now it clung to a nail behind the kitchen door, forgotten and unwanted. Chloe Turner caught me staring. "Oh," she said, twisting in her seat, "that's still there." "Yeah," I replied, caught off guard. "Didn't expect to find it." She forced a smile as she sipped her drink. "You look so young." I was 19. It felt like the world was mine that day. Mom bustled in, setting a pie on the counter. "Your cousin Henry's son just joined Goldman Sachs," she said, as if that was all that mattered. Robert Greene chuckled, nodding. "Smart kid, knows where the future is." That jibe hit hard. My path was different. Every decision pulled like a weight on my chest. Chloe Turner renewed her distraction, swiping at her phone. "Here's the Amalfi Coast. We rented a yacht for a day." The photo glowed with life. Clear blue waters, her boyfriend beaming, cocktails in hand. I managed to smile. "Looks beautiful." "It was," she assured me. "Europe's gotten so expensive, though." I chuckled lightly. Even as I agreed, I felt adrift, a ghost in the very memories that used to ground me. "You know," Robert Greene interjected, leaning back with a relaxed air, "you could have been there too, Sam." The words hung in the air, electric, heavy. Would I? Or would I always be stuck here, haunted by what was left behind? I swallowed hard, wishing I could reach across the table and pull back the laughter and warmth of a family dinner once more. What happened to that feeling? Why was I standing in fragments of my past, piecing together the missing connections? Samantha Greene stood in the old kitchen, the scent of warm apple pie swirling in the air, cutting through the faint layer of dust that had settled on memories too long neglected. She could almost hear echoes of childhood laughter bouncing off the faded wallpaper, but today that laughter was weighed down by unspoken words. Sunlight poured through the window, illuminating the old table where family dinners once thrived, all laughter and warmth. Now it felt like a cruel joke, a reminder of tangled connections, strained by distance. "Why did everything change?" she whispered, a sharp ache of nostalgia tugging at her heart for carefree days that had slipped away like shadows in the fading light. As she stood there, the soft clink of a spoon against a mug punctuated the stillness, a sound that felt alien compared to the chaos she'd experienced in war zones. Chloe Turner, her cousin, sat slouched on the couch, scrolling through her phone, attempting to distract herself with pictures from her European getaway. "Here's the Amalfi Coast," she said, a forced smile gracing her lips as she showed off crystal-clear waters and radiant sunshine. Yet, Samantha felt like a ghost, adrift in memories that used to anchor her. "Yeah, looks beautiful," Sam managed, bitterness creeping in. Back at the table, Robert Greene picked at his pie, oblivious to the turmoil simmering beneath. "You could have been there too, Sam," he commented casually, as if hoping to stir pride where jealousy lingered. Those words hung heavy in the air. Would she always be trapped here, haunted by the echoes of choices that felt both liberating and suffocating? "Why didn't you go into finance, like we talked about?" Robert Greene prodded, his voice thick with expectation. "All those math awards. You could have been at Chase by now." Sam met his gaze, hurt flashing across her face. "Maybe because I managed a crisis zone in Kabul," she whispered, the weight of her experiences like an anchor pulling her down. Grace Miller, her mother, turned away, her back a wall of indifference. "You always picked the hard road," she said, her tone a blend of weariness and resignation. "Moments like these felt like wounds unhealed." "Remember when I sent money for the roof repairs?" Chloe Turner interjected, trying to fill the silence. It was a weak attempt to bring warmth back into the room. "And when she covered my bills between jobs?" But the words fell flat. The tension thickened, suffocating. "It's okay," Sam finally said, swallowing the burn that welled in her throat. "I didn't expect a medal." Grace Miller turned to her, fatigue dulling the fire in her eyes. "You act like we failed you. But you chose paths that we couldn't follow. You blame us for being left behind." Her voice was calm, but it sliced through Samantha like a knife. "I never blamed you," she replied, her voice trembling with emotion. "I just wanted you to see me." "Look right here," Robert Greene muttered under his breath, "and all you've brought is rain." Was he speaking of the skies outside or the storm brewing within? Either way, it felt too much to bear. Rising abruptly, Sam felt the weight of everything pressing down heavier than her military gear ever had. No one made a move to stop her. Stepping outside, the crisp autumn wind whipped around her, rustling leaves that danced like memories scattered in the past. The first drops of rain landed on her shoulders, bringing a sting that felt good, a grounding discomfort. She pulled out her phone, fingers dancing over the screen until she found it. Military Resources Veteran Aid Emergency Shelter. Her heart beat painfully in her chest. Finally, she found a transitional housing facility, just 45 minutes away. She took a deep breath, clicked for directions, and as the sky opened up, it felt like a release, washing away more than just the dirt from her shoes. Rain hammered against the thin hotel window, transforming the world outside into a blurry watercolor painting. In her cramped room, Samantha Greene sat lost in memories, replaying every heated argument with her family. Suddenly, laughter cut through the storm, familiar yet heart-wrenching. It was Chloe Turner, her laughter mingling with unspoken tears, echoing off the walls as if to shatter the fragile silence. Why did it feel so isolating instead of comforting? As the echoes of their shared past collided in Samantha's mind, a painful truth emerged. Their rivalry masked an aching desire for connection. With each drop of rain, she felt a mix of nostalgia and sorrow, reeling from the realization that the real storm wasn't just outside. It was deep within their hearts, waiting for a chance to clear. Inside the community center, fluorescent lights grazed the cracks on the linoleum. This Army lodging facility was no luxurious retreat, but it felt warm and inviting compared to the frigid reception at home. She signed in, her name barely legible as the young corporal slid her a plastic key card. Room 207, Sergeant Major. The title felt foreign, heavy on her conscience like the ghost of a past she couldn't escape. With each thud of her boots on the worn carpet, she felt a strange mix of pride and sorrow. This was her home now, at least for the moment. Inside her room, The air smelled of disinfectant and something metallic, a reminder of battles fought and bonds broken. She hung her uniform carefully on the back of a wooden chair, staring at the ribbons that once sparkled with glory. Did they symbolize her courage or her isolation? Later, the mess hall hummed with quiet conversations and the scrape of forks against trays. Samantha picked at her meal, the familiar taste of meatloaf tinged with memories. Suddenly, a voice broke through her trance. Well, hell, if it isn't Samantha Green! She turned, spoon suspended midair. There he stood, Marcus Bell, a ghost from her past, haunting and exhilarating all at once. Would this encounter shift the balance of her tangled relationships? Would it lead to the connection she secretly craved? As their eyes locked, the rain continued to fall, promising change with every drop. As the golden sun slowly dipped below the horizon, painting the dim diner in warm hues, Samantha Green caught Marcus's eye. Her breath hitched in her throat. Familiar laughter danced around her, but nostalgia twisted into something darker. A weathered photo on the wall caught her attention, the local newspaper heralding her father's face as a hero from his service. Yet, that glory always seemed to eclipse her own choices. The weight of his indifference settled like a heavy fog in her heart. "You should be proud," Marcus said, but his voice felt burdened, like it knew the unspoken truths hanging in the air. Why had everything shifted so dramatically? Outside, the wind whispered softly, carrying secrets it never intended to reveal. Same cocky grin, she thought, noticing how Marcus had aged, his hair thinning and his posture more rigid, yet his presence exuded the confidence she remembered, as if the years hadn't shaped him since Kandahar. "Marcus," she said, a smile breaking through her defenses despite herself. "You're still alive?" "That's what the VA keeps telling me," he chuckled, easing into the seat across from her as if their years apart had vanished. "Heard you were back in town." "Must have heard wrong," she muttered, the words barely breaching the silence between them. Her family wasn't leaping for joy about her homecoming. His gaze tightened. "Family not too thrilled to have you home?" Samantha didn't respond. Her silence echoed louder than any words. He leaned back, arms folded, his voice casual but charged. "You know, the president's gearing up for this massive recognition ceremony. National honors, high stakes. Rumor has it one of our own might get named." Her throat tightened over the lump forming. "I'm sure someone deserves it." "Ever think," he said slowly, "that maybe it's you?" Samantha shot him a guarded look. "That's a long shot." "I don't think so," he replied earnestly. "You held our unit together when everything else was going to hell. You led without needing stripes." Her laughter was bitter, tinged with denial. "Apparently, that doesn't count much in my hometown." His eyes softened, sincerity cutting through her defenses. "I always thought you'd be the first of us to get pinned a star. Honestly, I still believe it." His words landed heavier than she expected. Gaze dropped to her untouched tray, the food suddenly unappetizing, and the room began to feel a bit too small. They fell into silence, the air electric with unspoken tensions. Eventually, she made her excuses and slipped away. Inside her room, shadows stretched lazily, and an old radiator hissed as if trying to divulge dirt from years past. She tossed her coat over the bed and glanced at her phone, silencing a notification that chimed annoyingly. But it wasn't just a message. An encrypted email from a Pentagon address blinked on her screen, a world she hadn't navigated in over a year. Subject, invitation, national recognition ceremony, classification, top secret. Eyes only. Priority, the weight of her past felt heavier than ever. Would this chance bridge the distance that had grown between her, her family, and her own identity? The wind outside carried the scent of rain mixed with the possibility of change. As I rummaged through the dusty boxes in the attic, a musty scent filled the air. There it was, the tattered scrapbook, pages yellowed with age. Memories flooded back, vivid like they never left. Laughter around the table at my childhood birthday, the frosting of chocolate cake melting on my tongue. But just as quickly, that joy faded. A heaviness settled in, a whisper of all the words we never said. I could hear my mom's voice, now a ghost of concern, her smile trying to mask the storm brewing beneath. What happened to those ties we used to share? The warmth of nostalgia twisted into bittersweet sorrow, each memory tugging at the frayed edges of our connections. That feeling? An electric jolt. It sent chills dancing down my spine, a constant reminder of the bond we can't escape, but also the shadows that linger. How do we bridge that distance? Can a broken family find its way back to each other? Days turned into a blur after I returned home. My family didn't exactly roll out the welcome mat. Their silence was louder than any speech I could muster. I felt like an outsider, a specter haunting a place that used to feel like my own. My sister Chloe reacted with surprise and distance, a mix of rivalry creeping in. What was once simple sibling banter now hung in the air like a thick fog. Then there was Grace, our mom. She worked hard to maintain family harmony. But behind her motherly smile I sensed her internal struggle, balancing her routines while feeling the tension simmering below the surface. Each glance exchanged felt heavy with unspoken words. And Robert Greene? Robert was like a ghost in his own home, disengaged and passive. He seemed content to avoid any talk of my return, preserving the status quo. But I was back for a reason. To reconnect, to heal, to figure out where I fit into this family tapestry that felt more like a tangle. Could it be a dusty attic, a faded scrapbook that unveiled the path to acceptance? Amidst the shadows, I sensed the wind shifting, the scent of rain mixed with the potential of something new creeping in. When the invitation appeared, everything changed. I could barely breathe as I opened the encrypted email from the Pentagon. You have been selected for national recognition. The words branded themselves into my mind, igniting a war within, a struggle against my past that I thought I'd left behind. I ran my fingers along the edges of my phone. Was this honor real, or just another shadow lurking in my life? The morning light turned my military lodging into a mosaic of gold and shadow. Outside, the world felt suspended, ready to snap. Was I really the one they wanted to honor? Marcus, my friend from service, pressed on. You're going to be on CNN. They're already teasing the segment. I couldn't respond. My thoughts drifted back to evenings spent with Robert Greene, covered in grease as we worked on the Thunderbird. I had felt so free then, so in control. And now, that car was gone, sold off, just like the pieces of me that seemed lost to time. What would it take to bring my family back together? Or was it too late for that? Meanwhile, just a town away, my family sat in the living room, sipping coffee from those overly cheerful mugs that proclaimed, "World's Best Family." They were living a reality I thought I was part of, yet here I was, standing on the outside. Would this invitation finally be my bridge back home, or would it just expose the cracks we tried to hide? The flat-screen TV flickered softly, casting an eerie glow against the neutral tones of the living room. Grace Miller sat primly, legs crossed, a napkin folded delicately in her lap, though the table lacked any food. Meanwhile, Chloe Turner sprawled on the couch, completely absorbed in her phone. Harold fiddled with the remote, flipping aimlessly through channels until he froze on CNN. Next Monday, we'll honor key figures in modern military strategy, the anchorwoman announced. The president himself will take part in what promises to be a monumental event in defense history. Grace Miller perked up, eyes widening. Isn't that the same day as the country club gala? Chloe Turner shrugged. Probably just some old generals. Boring. Harold chuckled sharply. More propaganda. just some dressed-up medals and uniforms to distract from the real budget issues. No one pondered the possibility that someone they knew, someone in their own family, might be standing in that spotlight. Back in the barracks, I laced up my worn-out boots and stepped outside. The crisp autumn air felt sharp yet refreshing against my skin. I watched soldiers perform morning drills in the training yard, their movements precise and disciplined, a rhythm that hummed in my veins. A soft smile surfaced, not quite a grin, but a flicker of my true self buried beneath the pain. "Not yet," I whispered to the rustling leaves. "It's not time to tell them." When I returned to my room, my phone buzzed, illuminating another notification from the Pentagon. Subject: Final confirmation. Live presidential address. The president would personally award the commendation, announcing my full name, rank, and contribution on national television. He reread the message repeatedly, not out of disbelief, but because it was real. I was no longer just the girl in the dusty photo. I'd become someone they could no longer ignore. As excitement and dread tangled in my chest, I wondered how my family would react. Would it bring us together, or shatter the fragile ties we had left? Standing at the door now, the shadows danced ominously as I stepped inside. The air was thick with all the things left unsaid. I could almost hear the echoes of the past whispering through the silence. Each familiar face I encountered held a history that felt like a weight, pressing down on my heart. "What are you all thinking?" I daringly asked, my voice barely breaking the silence. The room froze in that moment. Chloe Turner's eyes darted away while Grace Miller's fingers tightened around the napkin. Questions loomed heavy like storm clouds, and a storm brewed inside me too. Would this reunion draw us closer or tear us apart for good? They didn't invite me for Sunday dinner, but the White House would. I stood in front of the mirror, the full dress uniform hugging my frame. Those 4 stars on my shoulders felt heavier than any gear I'd lugged through the deserts of Afghanistan or Iraq. Freshly polished metals caught the sunlight pouring in and sent a spark of nostalgia coursing through me. Just then, Marcus stepped into the room and said, "Damn, Samantha Green, that uniform was made for you." I allowed a faint smile to escape, reminding myself it took 20 years and countless battles to wear it like this. Outside, the buzz of anticipation grew louder. Media tents sprouted like mushrooms after a rain, temporary barriers lining the lawn. Flags danced in the breeze, and beneath the emblem of the Department of Defense, a podium awaited. It all felt like a dream, yet my hands trembled. No firefight had ever shaken me like this. Marcus handed me the program, his eyes sparkling. "Your name's at the top of the list. The president himself will call you." I swallowed hard as the mission statement hit me. Live recognition for bravery, broadcast to the entire country. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was still that girl flipping through old family photo albums, hoping my past wouldn't overshadow my present. "They'll all hear it tomorrow," he said casually, but a storm brewed inside me. My thoughts strayed to a different kitchen, one where my mother was likely basting a roast chicken, humming softly as the scent of it filled the air. My father would be buried in bills or skimming through the newspaper. Chloe Turner, absolutely glued to her phone, probably on a social cascade, oblivious to the roots of conflict festering beneath our surface. I imagined my family across town, Grace Miller placing that golden brown chicken in the oven, Harold muttering about rising grocery prices. Would they even care what this recognition meant for me? What did it look like, returning home to a family that felt more like strangers? As I fought back those tangled memories, I wondered, would our reunion mend the rifts of the past, or tear us apart all over again? In amidst those chaotic thoughts, the past flickered like old film footage, my mother's laughter and my father's indifference echoing in the quiet hours of the evening. Those Sunday dinners, filled with unspoken words and strained smiles, teased me, each moment lingering like the sweet scent of rain after a thunderstorm. I stepped back, taking a breath, focusing on the present, the battles left behind. It felt like standing at the edge of a cliff, a leap of faith looming before me. Would this moment of recognition finally bridge the gap between who I'd become and who I used to be? Or was it just another reminder of the chasms family was meant to fill? In that silence, I realized just how freed, yet utterly trapped, I felt. Were they all secretly waiting for the truth to spill, and could I find my place again amidst the glimmer of my new reality? Chloe Turner stretched across the couch, scrolling. Her eyes narrowed. She paused. A single headline caught her attention. Tomorrow's ceremony to honor unsung heroes of national defense. And just beneath it, trending # Samantha Green Green. Me, she murmured, eyes still glued to the screen. Kai Tanai Quen Lam. Grace Miller didn't look up. What are you mumbling about? Chloe Turner frowned, turning the phone toward her. But the moment passed. The news segment changed. Her attention flitted elsewhere. Meanwhile, in the Pentagon courtyard, I paced slowly beneath the autumn trees. Bronze leaves swirled around my boots. I thought of the times I'd walked similar steps toward briefings, toward farewells, toward helicopters that never returned the same. A tall man in civilian dress stepped toward me. The Secretary of Defense, he offered his hand with a reverence that startled me. Tomorrow, Major General Green, the nation, will learn your name, and we will owe you a debt we can never repay. Thank you, sir, I said quietly, but I didn't do it to be known. No, he agreed, but that's exactly why you must be. Later, Marcus and I sat on a bench near the perimeter. His voice was softer now. Personal. You sure you don't want to invite them? We can make room. I didn't look at him, just watched a young private walking her German shepherd near the barracks. The dog paused, sniffed the air, then looked up at its handler like it sensed something important had shifted. They had every day for 20 years to ask me where I was, I said. They never did. Marcus exhaled through his nose, nodding. Besides, I added, standing to leave, they already made their choice. That night, I packed my things carefully. The invitation embossed with the presidential seal sat unopened on my desk. Tomorrow would come. The whole world would be watching. But for tonight, I let silence be my guest. And as I lay down somewhere in the house that no longer felt like mine, a television blinked on 10 AM. Tomorrow, live from Washington, D.C., the President will honor our nation's most outstanding defenders. Stay tuned. When that moment arrived and the President read my name live on national television, cheers erupted. But for my family, silence. The ceremonial hall shimmered in white and gold, military uniforms sharp against the backdrop of the presidential seal. I stood just outside the frame, hidden like a shadow, while my parents' living room buzzed with the flicker of CNN. Chloe Turner's taunting laughter echoed in my mind, a haunting reminder of childhood doubts. You'll never be recognized by anyone outside this house. I used to believe her. As President Halbrook stepped up, his voice was steady, but I felt a tremor in my fingertips. This moment was real, but I was unprepared. He delivered his speech like clockwork, each word drilling deeper into my heart, especially as he declared, in a time when our nation faced unprecedented threats. My breath caught in my throat. This wasn't just a ceremony, it was my life, and every heartbeat echoed the weight of my journey. One mind brought clarity to chaos. I gripped the edge of my seat, feeling the heat of the spotlight. One leader forged, not in comfort but in crisis, charted the course we followed to security. The room brightened, and suddenly I was anchored in the moment. My name rang out. Colonel Samantha Green Green for groundbreaking strategic leadership. Applause washed over me like a tidal wave, but I could only picture a suburban living room in Ohio. The sound of glass shattered. I didn't have to turn to know it was Grace Miller. The crystal tumbler dropped to the carpet. a dull thud resonating in the silence that followed. Chloe Turner's phone stuck on the screen, frozen in disbelief. Harold, my father, didn't utter a word. He simply stared at the image of the daughter he'd overlooked being hailed as a hero. As I stood there, the warmth of the White House surrounded me. But my heart was tethered to home. The president stretched out his hand. "Welcome, Major General Green." He pinned the insignia over my heart, a symbol of everything I had fought for, and the void I feared still loomed back home. Would this honor fill the dark spaces, or would it only deepen the divide? The air shifted in the room as Samantha Green's name echoed on screen, revealing a past long buried. She looked to her family, faces frozen in disbelief, the weight of years of unsaid words hanging heavily in the atmosphere. Chloe's surprise morphed into a distant gaze. Grace sat silent, hands clenched together in a dance of pride and resentment. Outside, the rain drummed softly against the window, the scent of wet earth flooding her senses and drawing up memories of childhood shared. The applause faded, replaced by a new tension that wrapped around them, thick and unyielding. Samantha saluted crisp and exact, then lowered her hand to the thunder of applause. Cameras zoomed in. She smiled not out of victory but to hide the tears that threatened. This was liberation, not revenge. Behind her, Marcus whispered, "I told you they'd see you." And they did, but just too late. Somewhere in the crowd, General Cooper nodded. She caught his eye, and suddenly, every late night studying ration maps, every hour spent commanding from sand-swept tents flashed before her. Every soldier lost compressed into this one moment, her name finally spoken aloud. Back in their quiet Ohio house, Grace sat unmoving, the words "Major General Green" echoing from the TV. That silence felt louder than the applause. Later, in the black SUV taking her back to the Pentagon quarters, Samantha's phone buzzed violently in her lap. She didn't want to look, but could she ignore it? Robert Green, 15 missed calls. When she lived in silence, no one checked in. Now, the world suddenly remembered. Notifications piled up like snowdrifts. Her name was everywhere, splashed across news tickers, hashtags, and even memes. A message from an old classmate. "Didn't know you were that Samantha Green. Congrats." A long-forgotten sergeant wrote, "Always knew you'd go far, ma'am." An unfamiliar name said, "You give me hope. Thank you for your service." Samantha sat on the edge of the bed with her uniform jacket folded neatly beside her, still warm from applause and respect. Yet none of it touched the part of her that remembered lost birthdays, unanswered calls, the silence from home. It was different now. Chloe's name flashed across the screen. She hesitated, questions swirling in her mind. Would this honor bridge the divide? Would it finally pull her family back together, or had the years of silence ripped them apart forever? I stared at my phone, her name flashing on the screen once, then twice. I let it ring out, my heart racing. I couldn't face her voice yet. Not without remembering the birthday card I sent 5 years ago, the one with our childhood photo. She never replied. The silence still stung. Then a voicemail from Grace Miller popped up. Her voice trembled, not with grief, but with something heavier. "Samantha, we were wrong. I was wrong. I don't even know where to start, but if you ever decide to call, just know your mother is proud of you." Another buzz, an email this time from Robert Green. Subject: "Let me explain. Samantha, I didn't think it would come to this. I thought I was protecting the family. Maybe I was just protecting myself from the truth. I want to see you. Please let your old man look you in the eye." Just then, Marcus knocked gently on my door. "They're all coming out of the woodwork, huh?" My response was a nod. He sat down, concern brewing in his eyes. "You going to respond?" I sighed. "I don't know. They chose their silence. I get to choose mine." He leaned forward, eyebrows raised. That's fair, but if you don't give them a chance, you might never hear the full truth. I held his gaze, resolute. I'm not ready, and this time, no one gets to push me. Later that afternoon, CNN reached out. The same reporter who covered the ceremony wanted an in-depth segment about my career and legacy. There's something compelling, Samantha. A woman who led with brilliance but came home to indifference. I paused, weighing my words. Let me think about it. Click. The line went dead, but the echoes lingered in my mind. Just before midnight, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was Chloe Turner. The message was simple. I'm coming to the base. I need to look you in the eye. Chloe Turner didn't bring flowers. She brought something deeper. The look of someone finally seeing both herself and me clearly for the first time. The rain tapped softly against the window of the quiet cafe just outside the base. The air was thick with the familiar scent of cinnamon and burnt espresso. Half-empty booths surrounded me, but I chose the corner spot, my back against the wall, facing the door. Old habits die hard, don't they? When Chloe Turner walked in, it hit me. She was a world away from the glossy Instagram version I remembered. No makeup, plain jeans, a jacket too big for her frame. But her expression wasn't apologetic, not quite. It felt stripped down, raw. She locked eyes with me and I just sat there, not waving, not smiling, just watching. Sliding into the seat across from me, she took a breath, steadying herself. I didn't come to make excuses, she said. Good. I was wrong. We were wrong, she added, folding her hands like a student awaiting a lecture. I raised an eyebrow. But you never said anything either. Her response was instant. That's true. I was under the impression you'd chosen to walk away. And here we are, I replied. The cafe was alive with the sounds of rain and the hum of quiet conversations. But in our bubble, the silence stretched, palpable yet necessary. I thought I was the one who had it harder, Chloe Turner confessed. The golden child, the one expected to keep everything together. They spoiled me, yes, but they demanded so much in return. From me, too, I interjected softly. You didn't have to pretend. They already decided I didn't matter. She glanced away, biting her lip, holding back something deeper. I didn't come to ask for your forgiveness. I don't deserve that. I just needed you to hear me say it. I needed you to know. I see you now. I finally do. The rain continued to tap a gentle rhythm on the cafe roof, echoing the beat of our growing connection. A cautious symphony of understanding rising from the remnants of our fractured past. Outside, the streets shimmered, kissed by rain, as tension hovered above us like a pulled string, waiting for resolution. And as I looked into Chloe Turner's eyes, I felt a flicker of hope. Rebuilding wouldn't be easy, but maybe this was the first step. Could acceptance thrive amidst lingering hurt? And might we, finally, stand together in the light of understanding? Her voice cracked on the last word. A quick blink wiped away a tear, but there was no sobbing, just a soft vulnerability hanging in the air. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out a worn photograph, sliding it across the table between us. It captured us as little girls, barefoot in the grass, one with a missing front tooth, the other holding a plastic sword like a hero. Chloe Turner's gaze locked onto the photo, her hand hovering above it, but she didn't dare to touch. I stood up. No goodbye. No promises. Some cracks take years to heal, but now the light was breaking through. Isn't it strange how those who hurt the most often aren't the ones who bleed, but the ones killed slowly by silence? The morning sun blazed down, glaring off the asphalt, as sharp as the memories I wanted to bury. I had just finished my workout, sweat clung to my back, my breath steadied after the push-ups Marcus had insisted on. He'd grinned at my groans. I wasn't in the mood to smile back. Inside the operations tent, General Cooper handed me a sealed envelope, the Department of Defense crest embossed on the flap. He simply waited while I tore it open, scanning the words. "You'll be speaking at the Strategic National Defense Summit," he said, his voice steady. "You've been named the keynote speaker, the first woman in 10 years." His words felt distant, as if I were hearing them from another world. He added softly, "You earned it, didn't you?" Marcus walked in, clipboard in hand, catching a glance at me before looking back at Cooper. "She's got visitors," he said quietly. "Persistent ones." I didn't need to ask who. The weight of knowing settled in. I changed into a fresh shirt and made my way across the base toward the gates. From a distance, I spotted a figure standing stiffly beyond the barrier, hands in pockets, head held high. Though he tried to seem strong, Harold Green's posture gave him away. He was bracing for something, not just the encounter but possibly rejection. Time had not been kind. His hair had receded even more, and the lines around his mouth told tales of worry or guilt, or maybe both. As I approached, the air grew thick with unspoken words. The faint rustle of leaves outside felt distant, like the echoes of our shared past. Just then, the small slanted roof creaked ominously, and a voice cut through the tension. "You can't just leave us like this, Nat." It was Robert Greene, appearing at the threshold, his unexpected presence shattering the moment. Chloe Turner's eyes flickered with a mix of surprise and unease. Suddenly, everything we had hidden, those family secrets, the fog of old hurts, felt exposed. Would we finally confront what had lingered for so long, or would we slip back into silence? That silence had become heavy, pressing down like the scent of rain-soaked earth. Yet there was a glimmer of hope, a flicker that maybe this was the moment to break free from the chains of the past. Would we find a way to reconnect, to understand one another amidst all the chaos? It felt possible, but only if we dared to face the truth. Together. He didn't flinch as I stepped closer, but his face was a mask, unreadable. We stood there, two soldiers in a standoff, waiting for orders that would never come. "I had to pull strings to get here," he said, his tone flat. "They don't usually let civilians through." I nodded, feeling the weight of his words but saying nothing. All I wanted was to connect. "You're seeing me," I replied, my arms crossed tightly against the chill of our conversation. He looked down, fidgeting, an anchor in a storm. "You've done more than any of us imagined. More than I ever gave you credit for." I stayed silent, letting the moment linger in the air, heavy like a summer cloud ready to burst. I thought I was doing the right thing, keeping you grounded, keeping you close to the family path. His voice trembled slightly, revealing a hint of vulnerability. But I was wrong. I see that now. A breeze stirred between us, rattling the base flag high above. Harold cast his gaze to the ground, then lifted it to challenge me again. "Is it too late, if I wanted to try again? Start over?" I exhaled slowly, weighing my words carefully. "It's not that you're too late," I said softly. "It's that I'm not starting from that place anymore. I've built a different life, one without begging for someone to believe in me." He blinked, swallowing hard. The same man who once told me emotions were for the weak now stood before me, stripped of bravado, vulnerable. I just wanted to say, "I'm proud," he murmured, even if I didn't show it. I nodded, small but significant. No anger, no forgiveness, just the quiet boundary I fought years to create. And then I turned and walked away. Behind me, I heard his footsteps pause, caught in disbelief, then slowly retreat into the shadows. The sun blazed overhead, its light feeling bold against my skin. They used to erase my name from the dinner table, but today I embrace it fully. I am Samantha Greene. As I stepped onto the stage, rows of uniforms lined the audience. Eyes hardened from witnessing too much, Hearts guarded, a military band had played a muted version of America the Beautiful, and the MC's voice echoed across the hall. Our next speaker needs no introduction. You've seen her story unfold, but now let her tell it herself. The silence hung like a breath held too long. Would my words be strong enough to break the chains binding us? Would they finally resonate in the hearts that once felt so distant? As the moments ticked by, I realized this was my shot, not just for me, but for all of us. What truth would emerge from the depths of our shared struggle? Please welcome Major General Samantha Green. The lights glare like a summer afternoon, sharp and bright. Cameras capture every step as I stride to the podium. My name glimmers on the screen behind me, Major General Samantha Green. I wasn't born into this legacy. I built it with purpose. As I pause and scan the room, I'm not just creating drama. I'm soaking in the weight of this moment. The journey from where I began is profound. I remember being 16, penning an essay titled, "Why Honor Matters More Than Glory." I didn't win that scholarship. They said my ideals were too lofty. Yet those words linger with me, echoing through every decision I've made, from that first oath in the sands of a distant land to the times I questioned my own worth. I've held on to one truth: honor isn't inherited. It's forged. Silence fills the hall, heavy and respectful. I joined the military not to prove anyone wrong, but because living a life less than what I knew I could be was unthinkable. I wasn't raised among traditions that embraced my calling. My family claimed I was difficult, that I made things harder. Maybe I did, but isn't that often what truth demands? I chose truth. In the second row, I notice General Cooper, a subtle nod of encouragement. Marcus sits nearby, his arms crossed, but a hint of a grin touches his lips. He knows some pieces of my story, but not like this. I was disowned for donning a uniform over a suit, for prioritizing orders instead of family holidays, for believing that service to my country could be as sacred as blood ties. And yet, here I stand. The applause begins, a polite murmur, but it hasn't hit the heart yet. I'm not done. I don't stand here because of medals. I stand here after countless battles, some in deserts and jungles, others behind screens and maps. I persisted when my name vanished from the mailbox, when my calls went unanswered, when the holidays passed with empty chairs echoing silence. As the echoes of my speech fade, a sudden gust of wind sweeps through the open doors, carrying whispers from the past. I catch Chloe Turner's gaze, sharp and distant. Her expression shifts. Surprise gives way to something heavier, an unspoken challenge. To my left, Grace Miller's face is twisted in routine, but a flicker of conflict dances in her eyes. The applause begins but feels hollow, interrupted by the sudden clench in my abdomen. This is it, a moment that could fracture us or lead to healing. The weight of unaddressed truths looms like storm clouds gathering outside. Can we truly bridge the gap, or are we destined to remain strangers within our own family? The question hangs in the air, palpable and electrifying, urging us to confront the unacknowledged, to face the truths we've avoided for too long. Will this moment ignite healing, or deepen our divide? The hall buzzed with anticipation, the kind that makes the air feel electric. As I stood at the podium, my heart thrummed with every clap. Were they applauding me, or the memory of a soldier lost? A pulse echoed like distant battle drums deep in my chest. I glanced to the side, and there it was, the glint of Chloe Turner's camera lens capturing the moment. I hadn't seen her all night. Were we allies or rivals now? Chills traveled down my spine. This applause was more complicated than I ever imagined. What do they see when they look at me? A woman reborn from the ashes of her own identity. The weight of their expectations pressed down heavily. But my most painful battlefield? That living room where I felt invisible. I inhaled deeply. All those battles taught me something vital. Family isn't just blood. It's those who stand beside you without hesitation. Now, the silence crackled with tension. My name is Samantha Green. I'm not a legacy. I'm not privilege. I am a soldier who refused to fade away. For every young woman who's ever been told she was too much, too bold, too distant, I embodied you. The applause erupted, real this time, not out of obligation. Just as the MC moved to reclaim the mic, a voice called out from the press section. Major General Green, do you have a message for your family? I never hesitated. I did send one years ago. They returned it. A pause lingered. Then a standing ovation swept the room. No fanfare, just unvarnished support for someone who never expected it. Later that night, my phone blinked with unread messages, but one stood out. Do you want to see Mom? From Chloe Turner Green. I held that message, not opening or deleting it. It felt like a letter I had already written in a voice I finally owned. Chloe Turner was once the one who taught me to fasten my blouse. Yet, when I needed her the most, she stayed silent. In my hotel room, the memories flooded me. Here, the hospital had a dim glow. Filtered light spilling through the beige blinds, casting dusty lines on the floor. Grace Miller lay there in a narrow bed, her eyes half closed, pretending not to see me. Still, her fingers tightened against the sheet. A slight betrayal. I stood still, letting the door click shut behind me. The air was sickly with antiseptic and the scent of wilted flowers. I stepped forward and placed a small vase of blue delphiniums on the table. How do you mend what's been broken? This moment could carve pathways to healing, or widen our divide. Will we finally face our truths, or stay lost in our own fractured memories? In the dim light of the hospital room, Samantha Green faced her mother, Grace Miller. Memories of childhood flooded her thoughts. Grace Miller used to plant flowers in their front yard, back when it felt like she'd always choose Samantha over everything else. Now, Grace Miller stared at the wall, lost in a world of her own. I didn't come here to fight, Samantha said, her voice barely a whisper. But still, the silence enveloped them both. It felt heavy, like a storm ready to burst. Pulling a chair beside her mother, Samantha gripped the armrests, grappling with all the words that had built up over years of silence. But nothing came out. Finally, Grace Miller spoke, her voice a raspy echo of the past. I taught you how to live well. I just never had the courage to live beside you. The sting of those words pierced through Samantha. Grief, anger, both. Is that what this is? Courage, she questioned, locking eyes with the woman who had been a distant figure for so long. The shadows under Grace Miller's eyes told a different story. Years turned to avoidance, a life half-lived. I need nothing, Grace Miller declared. No apologies, no explanations. I just wanted to see you, not as someone I failed, but as my daughter. Those words hung in the air like a dark cloud. Samantha let them settle. There was no demand for forgiveness, yet Grace Miller reached across the chasm they had built together. She hadn't asked for redemption, but still. You didn't stand up for me, Samantha responded, her voice steady. You watched them dismiss me. You let them erase me. A flinch from Grace Miller. I know. Why? Samantha's heart raced, demanding answers. Because I feared your father more than I feared the truth. That truth, like a knife, cut through the years. Samantha slowly stood, pushing her chair back with a grinding squeak. Grace Miller's eyes followed her every motion. You don't have to forgive me, she said, taking a deep breath. But if you want to see me clearly, even just once, I'm here right now. Just as Samantha turned to leave, she heard her mother's soft whisper. You're not like him. You're better. But Samantha couldn't find her voice. Not yet. The air filled with unresolved tension, the scent of aging paper and old wood merging with their shared history. Would this moment carve a path to healing, or merely widen their divide? The old family photo, dusty and forgotten under the table, suddenly caught her eye. Faces from a happier time stared back at her, echoes of childhood laughter buried under layers of hurt. Could they break the silence, or would they stay locked in this standstill, forever haunted by memories they couldn't escape? My throat tightened as I stepped out of the room, past the nurse's knowing nod and Chloe Turner's tear-streaked face waiting in the hallway. No time for words. I didn't need her permission anymore. Grace Miller's whisper still echoed in my mind. "I'm not like your father. I'm better. They invited me for dinner, but that chair, I gave it back a long time ago." A car pulled up outside the old house just after dusk. Chloe Turner had arranged it, along with a message that felt like an ultimatum. If you want closure, maybe you should let them try. Closure? As if flipping a switch would fix everything, as if their guilt could somehow replace the years lost. The house loomed in front of me. The porch light flickered, an uneasy welcoming. Inside, I could see shadows moving. My mother at the stove, my father pouring wine, and Chloe Turner setting the table. For a brief second, the scene looked inviting. But those memories? They cut sharper than a winter chill. The last dinner here was a blur of laughter. Chloe Turner had just received her acceptance letter to college, glasses raised with joy. Meanwhile, the envelope holding my enlistment papers sat sealed in my lap, like a hidden wound. Stepping inside, the scent of roast and herbs swept past my defenses, but my heart remained ice-cold. Chloe Turner greeted me at the door with a smile that felt more like a masquerade. "We're glad you came," she said softly. I nodded, but Grace Miller's frail frame at the stove made the air heavy with 1,000 unspoken words. Harold offered me a stiff nod. We sat down, tension thick enough to slice. The meat was well cooked, the wine tasted rich. Attempts at conversation sputtered. Chloe Turner shared details about her firm's new case. Harold chimed in about politics. My mother barely touched her food. Then came Harold's words. "I saw your speech at the Defense Summit." A sip of water felt like swallowing stones. "Did you?" I replied, each word weighed down by skepticism. "Interesting." Silence followed, thick and oppressive. Chloe Turner fiddled with her mashed potatoes, and I noticed Grace Miller's hands tremble slightly as she refilled her glass. Was this what they meant by family, or was it just another reminder of the walls built over years of distance, layers of hurt and longing? Would we ever find a way to bridge the gaps, or would we remain eternally locked in this painful standoff, like actors playing a scene written long ago? The air was thick with the scent of warm apple pie, a reminder of childhood that softened the bitter edges of my chaotic emotions. I closed my eyes, letting memories cascade over me like sunlight breaking through cobwebbed corners, laughter echoing in the garden, summer days swinging on the worn-out wooden swing in the backyard, and Grace Miller calling me in for dinner, her voice a comforting melody in a house now heavy with unspoken words. Did those innocent days really exist, or were they just ghosts of lost time? Each heartbeat pulsed with a longing for connection, but the bitterness hung thick, a lingering shadow over the years that slipped away. Then came the evening, Chloe Turner, standing there with her surprise. "I think it's brave," she said, catching me off guard, "that you're not angry, that you came tonight." But I knew better. I didn't come because I wasn't angry. The look on her face showed she didn't get it. "I came here to say something," I stated, my voice steady. "But don't mistake peace for forgiveness." Faces around the table fell, confusion etched on every line. Harold broke the silence, raising his glass. "To family and to forgiveness," he declared with forced cheer. But I felt the weight of years between us. "I'm not here to forgive. I replied, setting my glass down softly, each word deliberate. "Can't we start over?" Chloe Turner's voice trembled, a flicker of hope, or was it desperation? I met her gaze, the intensity of unspoken truths sparking in the air. Starting over doesn't mean going back to what it was. And what it was? Never saw me. Grace Miller, ever the mediator, whispered, "We're trying." My heart clenched. "You're trying now that everyone else sees me first." Tension thickened like the humid summer air, chilling my core. The clinking spoons fell silent. I felt the urge to rise, my chair scraping softly against the worn wooden floor. "I'll be going." The words barely grazed the surface, but Chloe Turner's lip quivered. "Do you have to?" "Yes," I replied, the chill of finality settling in. "The base has curfew. This dinner, this house, belongs to you all." They didn't follow me. No last pleas for me to reconsider. Outside, the night air kissed my face, stars twinkling down like distant reminders of what could have been. I turned my back to the house, crunching gravel softly beneath my boots. Some memories I had buried, once called a burden, now I signed my name with pride. Major General Samantha Green. The community center smelled fresh, reeked of new beginnings and polished dreams. Sunlight danced across my nameplate, casting long shadows on a desk that felt like a world away from that tiny, unforgiving kitchen. I ran my fingers along its edge, wondering how many pieces of myself I'd left behind in that house if I'd ever truly come home. It felt unreal, like I slipped into someone else's shoes. Then I reminded myself, no, these are mine. I built them from the ground up. Marcus leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, that trademark half-smile on his face. "Fits you better than your old barracks," he called out. I smiled back. "It better. Took me 20 years to earn this square footage. Command has finalized your portfolio," he added, handing me a thick folder. "Senior Ethics and Honor Advisor. Full discretion policy influenced direct access to the Pentagon chain." I flipped through the pages, nodding. It wasn't the power that excited me. It was the respect that came with the title. I was no longer the one people simply tolerated. I was someone they consulted. Later that afternoon, a gentle knock interrupted my thoughts. My new military aide opened the door to reveal a young woman in crisp, anxious uniform. A recruit. Barely past 20, her eyes held a cocktail of admiration and fear. "This is Eliza Morales," the aide introduced. She requested 5 minutes. I gestured her in, sensing her trepidation. "Morales," she swallowed hard. "Ma'am, people in my unit, they think I'm soft. They say I don't belong, that I'm wasting time." I studied her expression, and it wasn't tears she held back. It was shame, the kind that slowly seeps in until you start to believe it. "Do you want to be here?" I asked, locking eyes with her. "Yes, ma'am, more than anything." "Then write your name with what you do, not what they say." She blinked, taken aback. "I don't understand." "You will," I replied firmly, rising. I walked to the cabinet and pulled out a framed photo of my first squad. Rough faces, mud-streaked uniforms, and me, the smallest of them all. They called me dead weight once, said I wouldn't last a month. Her eyes widened. "You lasted 20 years. You don't need their permission to matter, just consistency." She stood straighter. "Thank you, ma'am." As she left, I returned to my desk. In the drawer sat an envelope, folded neatly, a letter from my father, sent weeks ago. I stared at it, feeling the weight of unspoken words. After a long moment, I placed it into a locked box. Could I ever confront that past? Just then, the air grew thick with unspoken tension as Eliza stood fidgeting with the hem of her uniform. Her eyes darted between me and the stack of papers on my desk. A quiet fear hung in the air, almost palpable as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. "I know this must be intimidating," I began cautiously. But before I could finish, a sharp noise from outside, the unmistakable sound of an argument, cut through the atmosphere. My heart raced. What were they fighting about? Did it concern me? And why did that looming uncertainty feel so achingly familiar? The past was colliding with the present. Would I find a way to bridge the gap between who I was and who I wanted to be? The evening light slipped away like whispers in the wind. I sat, heart pounding, as I prepared for the weight of what was to come. You know, I never got a chance to say it properly, Marcus spoke, breaking the silence. Congratulations! I nodded, my fingers brushing against the crisp document in front of me. This wasn't just a form, it was a directive for ethics training reform, something that mattered, by order of Major General Samantha Green. The ink dried as if it carried the very essence of my journey. I glanced at my calendar, a red marker circling the date. My first official visit to Fort Hall. The base where shadows of my past danced with memories. Letters home that went unanswered. The place I felt invisible because I didn't look like a soldier. Now I was returning as their leader, not seeking approval but demanding my space. There are doors you don't need to close when you've already moved beyond them. The base looked smaller now, not because it had changed, a constant gravel path, red clay stains on the bricks, but because I had changed. Time was a sculptor shaping us, while truth sliced through lies. As I stepped out of the Jeep, the familiar weight of the ground met my boots. The distant echo of marching cadences wafted through the air, intertwining with the scent of rain-soaked earth. I paused, watching new recruits fumble through their drills, their formation slightly off as they found their rhythm. Once I stood there too, full of fear and uncertainty. Now I stood apart without a trace of arrogance, just steadiness in my resolve. Eliza spotted me first, a grin breaking through her breathless sprint. "Ma'am," she saluted sharply. I waved her to ease. "At ease, Morales. How are they treating you?" "Better," she replied, her voice strong yet tinged with vulnerability. "It's still rough, but I remember what you told me. Every time someone doubts me, I double-check my own faith instead of theirs." "That's a good place to start," I smiled, warmth rising in me like the sun after a storm. As we exchanged glances, the air shimmered with unspoken words, the tension of family history ready to burst. Just then, footsteps echoed in the distance, halting my thoughts, a signature sound that made my heart skip, a mixture of anxiety and hope. The door creaked, revealing Chloe's hesitant figure. Her expression was a swirl of surprise and caution. "Samantha, we need to talk." Her voice trembled as if preparing for a collision of worlds. The air charged, wrapping us in anticipation. What lay beneath her words felt like a heavy question, one we both yearned to explore. Would we navigate this delicate tapestry of past hurts entwined with hidden rivalries? Or were we destined to repeat the cycle, lost in familial turbulence? We walked side by side to the edge of the field, eyes glued to the drills. Chloe's hands fidgeted nervously, like flickering shadows beneath her skin. Reaching into my pocket, I pulled out a thin leather bracelet. It was worn, frayed at the edges, a piece of history. "This," I said, handing it to her, "belonged to a medic in my first unit. He saved my life in Kandahar, then died just weeks later. I've kept it ever since." She stared at it, eyes wide. "I can't take this." "You're not taking it, I'm passing it on." "That's different." I met her gaze unwavering. "Carry it like I did, not for decoration, but for direction." Chloe's voice caught, a flicker of vulnerability breaking through. "I will, I promise." Later that evening, after the day's final debrief, I wandered alone toward a small chapel nestled between two sturdy oak trees. It looked the same. Weather-worn stone, creaking wooden steps, a rusty iron cross leaning slightly to the left. I opened the door, greeted by silence. No service. No choir, just hushed memories. I sank onto the second pew, hands resting loosely in my lap. The air was thick with the scent of candle wax and cedar, wrapping me in nostalgia. I had come here before, after losing half my squad in an ambush, grappling with the unbearable weight of grief. Why them? Why not me? But today, I asked nothing. I just breathed. Soft footsteps echoed behind me. An old priest, somehow still standing, made his way to the front altar. "I remember you," he rasped. "You came here in uniform, left with tear-stained sleeves." I managed a small smile. "That sounds about right." He nodded knowingly. "Back then, you asked for forgiveness." I nodded slowly. "Today, I think I've finally given it." "To whom?" he asked, his smile gentle. "To myself," I replied, the truth washing over me. "That's the hardest one," he said. I stood, nodding in quiet thanks. Words hung between us that didn't need to be spoken. As I reached the door, I paused, taking in the wooden interior, faded benches and quiet walls, soaken with memories of yesteryears. Stepping outside, the cool air wrapped around me like the embrace of an old friend. Behind me, the door creaked softly, lingering like an echo of the past. As I turned, the dusk wrapped around me, revealing the shadows of unresolved tensions. I felt a stirring, as if the world was about to shift. Would I have the courage to confront the ghosts of my family? Would I finally break down the barriers that had kept us apart for too long? The night air thickened with questions only time could answer. I kept walking, leaving the door ajar. Some doors didn't need to be closed. Not anymore. There was a time I thought family was the anchor holding me steady, but all I ever truly needed was myself and one undeniable truth. Spring had finally arrived at the lake, mist gliding over the surface like whispered memories of better times. My porch's flag danced with grace in the morning breeze, an invitation to new beginnings. The air felt crisp, not cold. It was calm, not lonely. With a cup of black coffee cradled in my hands, steam rose like the promise of a fresh start. My cabin, small and battered, was more than just a roof over my head. It had become a sanctuary from the storms outside and the ones within. Today was about closing not just doors or wounds, but circles. Settling at my worn desk beneath the open window, I began to write. The first letter was for Marcus. "Thank you for standing by me," I penned. "You reminded me who I was before anyone dared to say it out loud." Next was to Eliza. "That bracelet never belonged to me. It belonged to whoever needs to carry it next. Carry it with courage, until you meet someone who needs it more." As I sealed the letter, my hands steady, my heart felt lighter than it had in years. Then my phone buzzed. A photo from Eliza lit up the screen. She stood there in full uniform, eyes gleaming with something deeper than joy, a fierce resolve. On her wrist, the bracelet, still worn, still proud. I smiled, the kind of smile that breaks the clouds. Minutes later, another ping broke the silence, a video message from Marcus. When his face filled the screen, I was met with that familiar grin. "General Green," he said, a tone of mock formality lacing his words. "You've earned a dozen titles by now, but out here, you're more than just a decorated officer. You're the damn lighthouse that kept half of us from sinking. Don't ever forget that." I replayed it over and over, not because I needed to hear it, but because this time, I finally believed it. But just as I sealed the last envelope, a sharp knock echoed through the stillness of the cabin. It rattled my thoughts into disarray. Momentarily frozen, I glanced at the door, my heart racing. Was it Marcus, returning to celebrate my tiny victories, or had the past finally come knocking? Doubt clawed at me as family dynamics, the weight and the wounds, swirled in my mind once again. Who stood outside, ready to challenge everything I had just begun to reclaim? The air thickened with tension. as echoes of unresolved conflicts threatened to flood back in. Could I confront the ghosts from my past, or would I retreat to the safety of my words? Later, I cracked open my journal, its leather cover worn and nearly bursting with memories. I turned past pages filled with doubts, anger, and the silent weight of unspoken words. It hit me. They never called me one of them. I never got the nod to belong, the invitation to sit at their table. That's all right, though, because now I carry my own name. I have a table of my own making. I paused, letting the pen rest between my fingers. There, near the edge of my desk, sat the envelope from my father. It was unopened, yellowed with age, frayed at the corners. It had journeyed with me through endless hotels and barracks and finally landed here. Today, I didn't need its words. I took it outside. The breeze was gentle. The grass glimmered, kissed by morning dew. I struck a match and felt the heat bite against my palm. The flame met paper. It curled, blackened, soft, and soundless. No grand gesture, just a release. Ashes floated up into the sunlight, each one a weightless memory set free. Back inside, I stood before the mirror. My uniform lay across the armchair like a second skin waiting for me. I slipped into it slowly, deliberately. Each button was a choice, each ribbon a fragment of memory. And when I looked up, something inside me shifted. My reflection wasn't a stranger. It wasn't just a soldier seeking permission. It was a woman who had carved her place in every room, even those that once shut her out. As the silence settled around me, steady as my breath, I spoke softly, clearly, a reclaimed name hanging in the air. I see you now, Samantha Green. They tried to erase me from the family table, but my name is etched into a nation's memory. I stand not to seek their approval, but to show that silence can't bury the truth forever. Justice doesn't always shout. Sometimes it waits, watches. Then it rises when no one expects it, like the final strike of a gavel in a trial long overdue. It might arrive late, but when it lands, it leaves no doubt. Maybe, just maybe, standing tall means you'll never again kneel before injustice.